Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're going to talk about this new palette from Too Faced. It's the White Chocolate Bar palette. I'm going to do my typical palette swatch and review type video where I'll give you product info, we'll do finger and brush swatches, and I'll do a quick eye tutorial using this palette. But I also want to compare the White Chocolate Bar to the White Chocolate Chip, which is this palette's predecessor. It's pretty funny that this White Chocolate Bar palette just came out. I don't remember which video it was, but I was discussing this White Chocolate Chip palette, and I basically said I wished that this was a full-size chocolate bar palette, and then like a month later they announced this White Chocolate Bar palette coming out, so I guess great minds think alike. I'll just be here waiting for that call from Too Faced. Whenever they want to hire me, it's fine, I'll be here. The White Chocolate Bar palette retails for $49. It is currently available, it is limited edition, and it is a Sephora exclusive. It is packaged just like the other chocolate bar palettes, except of course the outer packaging is white. It has 16 shades. There are 8 true mattes, 3 mattes with glitter, and 5 shimmer shades. When we compare the White Chocolate Bar to the White Chocolate Chip palette, the outer packaging is very similar. Of course, the chocolate chip is a lot smaller. This smaller palette only contains 11 shades, and of course the pans are much smaller. 10 of these 11 shades do appear in the new White Chocolate Bar palette. The one that has been left out is this peachy nude matte shade called Ambrosia. When the White Chocolate Chip palette came out, a lot of people were complaining about it and saying that they didn't like it, the pans were too small, they didn't like the quality, and I honestly didn't really think it was that bad. It's by no means my favorite Too Faced palette, but I didn't really hate it as much as everybody else hated it. Now it seems like the White Chocolate Bar is kind of suffering the same fate. This palette has received a lot of criticism, and I really don't think it's deserved. I think the quality in this palette is much better than the White Chocolate Chip palette, and like I said, I don't think the White Chocolate Chip is really that bad, but I do think that the White Chocolate Bar is much better. It seems to be a different quality, and a lot of the same shades do seem to be just a little bit different. What I notice when I swatch these shades side by side is that the shades from the full-size White Chocolate Bar seem just slightly cooler toned. The mattes are definitely much smoother and much more pigmented. The shimmers seem pretty close in quality. I will say that they do feel a little bit softer, but I have to take into account that my White Chocolate Chip palette is much older. I've had this palette for over a year, so that could account for why some of these shadows feel a little bit drier. I have to say I like this palette a lot better than I thought I was going to. I definitely just purchased it for the simple fact of completing my chocolate bar palette collection. Overall, I'm very impressed with the quality of these shadows. I think they're smooth, they're pigmented, they're really easy to work with. The shades themselves are kind of hit and miss for me. This bright green and this super bluish lavender shade, and even this pale gray, they're just not the kind of shades I really like to work with. So while the shadow quality on those is really good, I just personally don't really like those shades. But I will say it's great to see something different coming from Too Faced. Too Faced holiday palettes also get criticized a lot for their shadow quality not being up to par, and I don't think that's the case for this White Chocolate Bar. Another thing Too Faced catches a lot of heat for are these super glitter packed matte shades, and this shade Black Sugar is the only one that I don't really like in this palette. These two, Cookie Dough and Frosted Apricot, also are mattes with shimmer, but the glitters in those shades are much finer and they translate to the eye a lot better. Just based on those 4 shades that I pointed out that I personally don't like, this really isn't the top of my list for Too Faced palettes, but I am really impressed with the shadow quality. There are a few shades in here that I really like. I used a bunch of them in my eye look today, so later on in the video I'll show you a quick tutorial of how I got this eye look with this palette. I am really happy with how it turned out. I'm not usually much of a cool tone girl, so for this palette to turn out a cool toned look that I really enjoy, I think that's saying something. I'm gonna do finger and brush swatches of this White Chocolate Bar palette. All the swatches will be done on on the back of my hand with no primer. The finger swatches will be on top and the brush swatches will be below. As usual, for my brush swatches, I'll be using my e.l.f. flat eyeshadow brush, and I'll clean off in between each shade using my Veramona color switch. So let's get to swatching. Here's the top row from the palette. Again, the finger swatches are on top and the brush swatches are below. First, this very interesting bright green. This one is mint chocolate. Next, we have a matte white called Glaze. This is a warm peachy matte. This is a beautiful transition shade. This one's called Cake Batter. Next, the only shimmer in this row, this is Exotica. And lastly, another matte. This is a purple toned medium brown and it's called Chocolate Syrup. Here's the middle row from the palette. First, we have this super bright shimmery white shade called Pearl Candy. Next, this one isn't showing up as well on camera, probably thanks to my ring light. This one is Raspberry Rose. It has a pink base with a gold shift, and this one's much prettier in person. Next, this light silvery shimmer called Indulge. Here we have that matte bluish lavender. This one's called Lavender Cake. A matte light gray called Guilt Free, and lastly a brownish gray called Smoked Sea Salt. Here is the very bottom row from the palette, and these two shades, it's kind of hard to tell even in swatch, but these are both mattes with little micro glitters. The first one is called Frosted Apricot. This one is Cookie Dough. Next, one of my favorites in this palette, this is Sugared Raisin. And one of my least favorites in this palette, this is Black Sugar. And lastly, this very pale nude beige is called Banana Date. And I know you really can't see, it's like the same color as my skin, so I promise it's there. Now that you've seen the swatches, I'm gonna show you how I created my eye look using this palette. I'm starting off by priming my eyes with my all-time favorite eye base. It's the MAC Paint Pot in the shade Painterly. And then I'm gonna set my eye base using the shade Banana Date. This is just a really good skin tone match for me, so it is the perfect shade to set my eye base with. Then I'm going to take the shade Cake Batter and I'm going to start working that through my entire crease. And I am going to let this shade peak up just a little bit higher to bring some warmth to this look. Next, I'm going to take the shade Chocolate Syrup on this detail crease brush. This one's from Makeup Geek and I have just been loving this brush lately. I'm packing that shade all over the outer part of my lid and just really working it in and smoothing it out so that I don't have any harsh edges with that darker shade. Then I'm going to use the shade Exotica. I'm just picking that up with my finger and I'm going to pat that all over the inner 2/3 of my lid. Then I'm going to go back to my crease shade. I'm going to pick up Cake Batter on the same brush that I originally applied it with and blend everything together and make sure we still have some of that warmth in the crease. Next, I'm going to take Smoked Sea Salt and just using the same brush that I applied Chocolate Syrup with, adding some more depth to the outer part of the lid. To make sure everything is really nicely blended, I'm going back over that shade Smoked Sea Salt using Chocolate Syrup again. I really wanted to incorporate the shade Sugared Raisin, so I just picked up a little bit of that on my fingertip and patted that along the center of my lid for a little purpley pop. Then I'm going to work on my lower lash line. I started with the shade Cake Batter and I just smudged that all along the lower lash line. Then I picked up Smoked Sea Salt on a really flat definer brush and I packed that all along my upper and lower lashes. This is my go-to method to add some smokiness to a look without going overboard. I lay down a lighter matte shade, then I use the detail brush to add a deep shade right along my lashes. Then I go back with a medium shade on a pencil brush and blend everything together. In this case, I used the shade Chocolate Syrup, and I think these three shades created a really soft, beautiful, smoky look. Now it's time for my favorite part, the inner corner highlight. I use the shade Pearl Candy for this, and oh man, this is a gorgeous inner corner highlight shade. It is very bright. Lastly, I just curled my lashes and added a little bit of my L'Oreal Lash Paradise mascara, and that's my finished look. Basically, I don't think that this palette deserves the bad rap that it's getting. Even though it's not my favorite palette, I do appreciate that this is different from what Too Faced has been doing. I'm really happy to see that the quality is here. Aside from some of the glittery shades that I just don't prefer to work with, I think the mattes and the shimmers both have great pigmentation. They perform well with a brush, and I think they end up looking really great on the eyes. I still think I'm gonna get some great eye looks out of this palette, and of course, I'm just happy to have it in my collection. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I'm a huge Too Faced fan. I am a collector of their palettes, and of course, this one will be staying in a place of honor on my vanity with all my other chocolate bar palettes. That being said, I do prefer the chocolate gold palette that released around the same time as this white chocolate bar palette did. If you're debating between these two, my personal recommendation is to go for the chocolate gold palette. I love that palette. I think it's exciting, it's high quality, and it has gorgeous packaging. Maybe the fact that I love the chocolate gold so much kind of made me not love the white chocolate bar as much. Of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this palette. If you're somebody who loves pastels and loves cool tones, then you probably have a very different take on this palette. Please leave a comment and let us know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. I mean, doesn't everybody watch Gossip Girl while they swatch? I think they do. A mixture of but I'm cheers. Of cool but dang it.